So are you a musician or other kind of artist that has excess strain and tension in your arms? Maybe your muscles get too tight and it's just uncomfortable, or your muscles get really tired, or you can get tingling kind of sensations, or burning feeling in your arms. This is really common for performance artists and others who use your arms in your art, right? Whether you're playing music or dance or even writing, like writer's cramp and that kind of thing. So today I'm going to share with you 3 essential ideas from the Alexander technique for effortless arm use, even when you're doing really difficult things like playing music and doing art or whatever, or other daily activities. So I'll show you how to apply it to a bunch of different kinds of things. So my name is Joseph Arnold. I'm a violinist and Alexander technique teacher and director of the Soulforce Arts Institute. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the video. And today I'm going to be sharing with you 3 ideas about how to use your arms so that you can use them effortlessly without all that tiredness and strain and tension and burning and tingling and all whatever might be going on for you. These are lessons from the Alexander technique, and these are things that I use in my own life and that I teach all my students. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So, muscular tension is something that we all have to deal with. Because not only does excess muscular tension feel bad, it's uncomfortable, even painful, it really can interfere with the quality of what you're doing in your daily life, in your art, etc. This was a huge part of my life for a really long time. Again, I'm a violinist, and when I was in music school, in college, I was playing many hours a day. I was like crunched up like this while I was playing, and I didn't even realize it. I was so tight, and yet I didn't even realize it. And so I had injuries in my arms, in my back, in my neck, chronic pain for a long time. And it was only through the Alexander technique that I discovered how to undo all of that tension. And so there let's see, where do I want to start? I'll just start with the first thing. So first of all, your arms are a part of the rest of your body. Your arms do not like end here. When you're using your hands, it's not just about your hands. Your body's actually a web. All the muscles and bones, they all interlink like this. And the only reason you might think of your arm as being just like this part of your body, or your hand as being just this part of your body and not connected to the rest of you, is because of the way that our society thinks about things in general. Our word for the body is anatomy, which means to cut away. And so this is why we think of like a bicep as being only this little lump of muscle right there, and not something that's actually enmeshed in the entire web of your body. So every activity, even if it's something very fine that you're doing with your fingers, like playing violin or writing or whatever, every activity is a whole body activity. And this is our first key to effortless arm use. If you use your arms in a disconnected kind of way, there's like a toy soldier where the body stays static, your torso stays static, and then you're trying to move your arm around. But you can see in the way that I'm moving right now, it's kind of stiff. And that stiffness comes from like trying to keep my torso still or static while moving my arm around, right? But if even this is an unconscious idea for you, anytime you try to keep the rest of your body still or stiff while you're moving your arm around, you're going to get stiff. And so the key then is to let your body move to follow your hands. So let's do that now. Why don't you reach across your body first without letting your torso move, and you notice that you get to a certain point and then your arm just stops, right? Because that's the end of your range of motion right then, because your torso is not moving. Let's do the other side. Torso not moving, your arm just stops, right? So, but now reach across and then let your torso turn, and your arm just keeps going, right? You reach across the other side and you let your torso turn, let your legs turn to follow that. And it just keeps going and going. There's no rigid stop, right? So when you're opening up a door, let your torso turn, let your legs turn. When you're giving somebody a high five, let your torso turn. When you are, say, you're a violinist, let your torso turn with your bow, with your left hand. Just experiment with other things in your life. When you're bending down to reach something, let your legs bend. You don't push your arm down to reach for something. Let your body bend, and you'll see that you're just taking your arm for a ride. You're not pushing your arm somewhere. You're letting your arm go for a ride on the rest of your body. All right, so that's number one. Whole body, letting your arm go for a ride. Okay, number two is a whole hand, open wrist sensing. Whole hand, open wrist sensing. What does this mean? So when you're using your hands, you want to use as much of the surface of your hand as possible. So not just necessarily using your fingers, unless that's necessary for what you're doing, but beginning to use more of the surface of your hand. This will actually mean that it takes less effort to do something because you have more surface area. It requires less harsh gripping, which we'll get to in a minute. So whole hand, open wrist. Open wrist means your wrists aren't cocked back, your wrists aren't cocked forward. They're open. And so this actually makes a huge difference. So let's try this right now. Cock both of your wrists back kind of hard and notice what happens to your neck. Notice what happens to your back. Do you get tighter or freer? Right, do the opposite, cock your wrists kind of hard forward. What happens to your chest? What happens to your belly? What happens to your neck? Do you get tighter or freer? Right? Anytime you cock your hands to an extreme like that, really any part of your body, but a lot of people tend to do this kind of thing when using your arms and hands. Anytime you do that, you get tighter overall, and that's not going to help. This was a really big part of my violin relearning that happened through the Alexander technique. I would go like this a lot while bowing, right? And like going up and down kind of hard. And I realized that I would get tight every single time I did that. And so that would make my bowing more stiff, and that would make my sound kind of small and brittle and forceful. And so once I learned how to use my fingers to change the angle of the bow rather than my wrist, maybe I'll do a whole series of videos on this another time. But once I learned to keep my wrist open, and I really had to think about it. I had to like look at my wrist while I was doing things in order to see, like, oh yeah, it doesn't really feel like I'm cocking my wrist, but take a look, cocking my wrist. So you might do that like while you're using a fork, while you're using a pen, while you're engaged in your creative activity, whatever that is. Just watch your wrists. Yeah, and the third part, whole hand, open wrist sensing. Maybe you could even do a whole video, just series of videos on this topic. But the sensing piece is, to get you out of any kind of rigid position. Anytime you think of your body as being in a position or needing to be in a position or some kind of posture, like the right posture, then you're done. You've made yourself stiff, and that's a really poor basis for doing whatever it is that you want to do. So one way out of that is to think of sensing what you're doing instead of imposing a position. Sensing your body, sensing your instrument in movement. Even using your other senses, like opening up your hearing while you're doing things. I've seen this in teaching violin over the years. A lot of times my students, they get so involved in trying to get the notes right that they no longer even hear their music. And it's kind of profound if you think about it. I remember going through this as well. And so even just opening up like their hearing. What I do is I'll sensitize them to their hearing by asking them to listen to things in the environment, that kind of thing, and then bring that same kind of listening to their playing, and everything gets better because now they're finally listening to their own sound. But the same thing goes for the body. If you're holding an object, sense the object in movement. Don't just kind of grasp onto it. Okay, so that was number 2, whole hand, open wrist sensing. There's a lot there, a lot more there to explore. But number 3, idea for effortless arm use in the arts and otherwise is to simply use less grip strength. I'll give an example from violin again. When my students are complaining about having tired arms, it's generally because they're gripping the violin. A lot of times it's here between the chin and shoulder, and so I'll work with them to release that. But a lot of times it's like they're pressing so hard on the strings. There's no need for that. There's no need to press so hard on the strings. And yet, there they go. So of course they're getting really tired. They don't realize it though. They don't realize they're doing it. So I have to bring their attention to that. And I ask them just to use the bare minimum. Bare minimum. And how about, and then of course everything gets better. They're using so much less tension, and their whole body, because of that web I was talking about earlier, their whole body actually gets freer. And so their sound actually gets freer. Because when you grip something, especially like a violin, something that's meant to vibrate, it dampens the vibrations. Makes everything harder. It makes the sound smaller, etc. So when you're using your hands, use the least amount of pressure. So let's do that now. So let's do an experiment. So push your fingers onto your thumb kind of hard. Notice what that does to the rest of your arm, your back, your breathing, your neck, your jaw. All right, and then put your fingers on your thumb very, very lightly, and notice what that does to the rest of your body. Probably get lighter. A little bit of a release. All right. So I've thrown a lot at you today. A lot of information, but maybe there's a couple things that spoke to you, a couple things that you could try on your own. And I would recommend that you do this in an activity that's not related to your art form, like a daily activity of some kind, writing or typing or reaching for something in a cupboard, or driving, or putting your fork to your mouth when eating, any kinds of things like that. And then practicing this in your art form, whether that's how you draw, or even how you sing. How you use your arms in singing really matters. Your arm muscles are connected to your ribs and everything. And certainly for like a string instrument or other musical instrument, this is going to be vital using any of these ideas. Okay, I think that's enough for today. Yeah, maybe I will say one more thing about Soulforce. So this is the Soulforce Arts Institute YouTube channel, right? And I'm writing a book called Soulforce Arts: The Vital Role of Musicians and Other Artists in a World That's Lost Its Mind. And in this book, I include ideas like this, like what we've been doing today, because what Soulforce is, it's your essential creative energy. It can get blocked like a kink in a hose through excess muscular tension. And I've seen it time and time and time again. When my students, even the little tiny violin students, when they release some excess muscular tension, everything gets better. Their technique gets better, they feel better, and there's more of a sense of flow and connection and meaning in their music. And it just happens. It just happens. And so that's their soul force coming through. And so this is one of the deeper reasons why it's so important. Muscular tension is not just some hindrance, annoyance that you can sort of wave away. That releasing muscular tension is one of the most important keys to your soul force. So I hope you found this helpful, and please do subscribe to this channel, like this video. You can subscribe to my newsletter at josepharnold.com. And what else? Yeah, you can take private lessons with me, Alexander Technique lessons, if you have injuries in your arms or elsewhere from doing your art, your music, or whatever. I live in Philadelphia. You can come for in-person lessons here, or we can do online lessons. Again, you can reach out to me at josepharnold.com. Okay, see you next time.